What I'm going to read for you today is Hildegard Sings. This was a book my grandmother Hildegard actually gave me in 1992. I would have been 7 years old. Hildegard Sings. Hildegard Rheinheffer was a singer. She loved singing more than anything in the world, except maybe eating. During the day, she was a singing waitress at an Italian restaurant, and at night she sang in the chorus of the opera. Hildegard loved the opera. The music was wonderful, the costumes were fun to wear, and the applause was thrilling. But Hildegard dreamed of being a star. Hildegard was determined to be ready when her big chance came. She took good care of her voice, she went to her voice lessons, and got her beauty sleep, and ate lots of food, just to keep up her strength. Early one morning, the conductor of the opera, Humphrey Waddlesworth, and the tenor, Bartholomew Bacon, had exciting news. Frau Hoppenhaller was ill, and Hildegard was going to have to sing the lead that night in a performance for the Queen. Hildegard was flabbergasted. There was so much to do to get ready. First, they all had a big breakfast. Then they went to the music room, so she could try out her voice. She played a few notes on the piano to get her pitches and took a deep breath. Blow! Humphrey and Bartholomew couldn't believe their ears. I just don't understand, sputtered Hildegard. My voice was just fine yesterday. Maybe there's a draft in the room, or maybe I didn't have enough breakfast. Now, said Bartholomew. You're just a little nervous. Why don't you relax and try again? Hildegard nodded and took a deep breath. Hildegard was terrified, her big chance, and she'd lost her voice. Everyone was going to laugh at her. She'd be too embarrassed to go out of her house. She had to leave town. This will never do, said Humphrey. We have to think of something to get her voice back. They tried everything. They had her gargle and sprayed her throat. They gave her hot tea with honey and lemon. They shoveled cough drops in her mouth. They had her take hot bubble baths and put ice on her head. They gave her mountains of food and a fancy new hat. They even took her to Madame Zelda, the astrologer, who counted the bumps on the bottoms of her feet and gave her some lucky charms. Nothing seemed to help. Hildegard couldn't sing a note, but just as they were ready to give up hope, Bartholomew had an idea. He whispered to Humphrey, Hildegard, bring Hildegard to the opera house tonight. Tell her I will send her something backstage that I'm sure will bring her voice back. So Humphrey took her to the opera house and told her to put her makeup and costume on and wait backstage for Bartholomew and his cure. She was very nervous. Why did she ever want to be an opera singer? What had happened to her voice? What if the audience threw rotten tomatoes at her? What was she going to do? The opera house began to fill. The musicians in the orchestra took their places. When the Queen arrived, everyone stood and greeted her with applause. Then the conductor stepped forward and the lights went down. Hildegard heard the applause fade and the orchestra began to play. There was a knock at the door. It's time for your entrance, Miss Rheinheffer, said the stage manager. She left her dressing room and slowly made her way through the dark set. The stagehands were frantically finishing the adjustments to the scenery and lights. Places, everyone, called the stage manager, and they all hurried off the stage. Hildegard stood alone behind the curtain. Her heart was pounding. Her knees began to wobble. Where on earth was Bartholomew? "Curtain up!" someone shouted. The lights on the stage started getting brighter. The sound of the orchestra swelled, and the curtain began to rise. Suddenly, Bartholomew burst through the stage door, carrying a small box. He tossed the box to Hildegard. "Quick, open the box!" he shouted. She grabbed the box and tore it open. A mouse popped out, ran up her sleeve and down her dress. She gasped, spun around, and let out a tremendous... Moo! From that moment on, she sang better than she ever had before. When the opera was over, there was an explosion of cheers and applause. Hildegard was a star. The end.